shooting at each other. But that is crazy that you have twice the army, twice as big of an army. You got them on the run. Why wouldn't you pick some of them off, on their way out to Kentucky? Instead of chasing them out of eastern Tennessee, Don Carlos Buell is going to set up in Nashville. And Lincoln is going to replace him with Rosecrans. No, Don Carlos Buell, you didn't crush Braxton Bragg when you had the chance. Instead, you camped out in Nashville. You didn't smash him, and you didn't smash him and push him out of East Tennessee. So Philip Sheridan was kicking ass. He was pushing in the center. He was doing a tush-push, blitzkrieg right down the middle. They're going to get to Perryville. They push back behind Perryville. But Don Carlos Buell doesn't come with it reinforcements. He didn't exploit the gains. He didn't extort and exploit the gains. By the time he heard of it, it was dark. And apparently when it's dark, then people, hey, we can't shoot people in the dark. Which kind of, that's, if that was like the rule back then, makes me think of how big of a surprise is, attacks in the dark today. You got infrared, you got flashlights and lights, so you could definitely come in with a bunch of lights, and you could definitely come in with a bunch of infrared. The dark should not, when it comes to warfare, the darkness stopped him. I'm scared of the dark. Yeah, they're scared of the dark too. Let's pursue them. No, let's pursue them. Why are we going to let them? I think they left at like 1 in the morning. There's a Burnside, Kentucky, named after General Burnside. There's also a Winfield, Tennessee, which is named after a general for the United States of America. Burnside, Kentucky, Winfield, Tennessee. Burnside's near Somerset. Let's see here. What else do we got? Oh, yeah. So the election of 1862, it wasn't just about the Battle of Perryville. They had their own issues, right? They had economic issues. The war, everything was kind of tied to the war, but that's not all Americans were thinking about was just the war. Economic issues. They just had the greenbacks, so they just created the dollar. The Legal Tender Act of 1862 created the U.S. dollar bill. So we didn't have paper money until the Civil War. If it wasn't worth the Continental, right, the Constitution says all debts had to be paid in gold and silver. So while paper money made trade easier, it also made inflation. Inflation rose because people didn't know what the value of these things were. It was kind of an experiment. It's not backed by silver or gold. It was fiat. So it started out as fiat currency, and it's still fiat currency today. There was also labor shortages because of the draft and enlistment that created a bunch of labor shortages for a lot of industries. The Militia Act of 1862 allowed states to implement the draft if they wanted to. That was not popular. That was not a popular thing that Lincoln did. So that's, not only does that contribute to labor shortages, but then you got Lincoln's preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, which he announced September 22nd, 1862. So now you got a bunch of racist people that's pretending that they're against the war on principle and some shit, but really they're racist bastards. And so they're afraid of the Emancipation Proclamation. November 1862, the Union, there's other battles. So the Union is going to lose the Second Bull Run. August 1862, there was high casualties at Antietam, which was September 62. But we do end, the, political year before November 4th to 11th on a good high. We won the Battle of Corinth. We won the Battle of Perryville. And you could always twist these things. So even though in Lincoln's mind, Bragg could have been crushed by Don Carlos Buell. Buell could have crushed Bragg. He won the war because he pushed the motherfucker out of Kentucky and he never came back into Kentucky, right? So who took Perryville? Americans took Perryville. Now you could say that the Confederates won because they killed, more Americans than they killed Confederates. But there was just hundreds were killed on both sides, right? 700 on one side, 500 on the other. So that's, even though you had Antietam in the Second Bull Run, for their side, on our side, we had Corinth, the Battle of Corinth, Mississippi, and the Battle of Perryville, Kentucky, on our side. In Kentucky, they had 10 House seats. It went down to 9. And they had 7 pro-Union, 3 not, to 5 to 4. So that was a defeat in Kentucky as well. Lexington stayed Unionist. Midwest regional concerns, the Mississippi River limited trade for the Midwest. So because the Confederates controlled the Mississippi, then the Midwest couldn't use the Mississippi to trade with people of the South. There was also a cotton shortage. There was a cotton shortage, right? They're going to use their own industries and use their own things for themselves, for their own people. And maybe that's what Kentuckians were thinking. It was like, is that the battle? Is it, I have to stand up for about my cotton underwear? Do you want your cotton? Do you want to keep your cotton underwear? Was it all just an economic consideration? The Emancipation Proclamation was not popular, especially in Illinois and Indiana. Perryville is in Buell County. The largest battle in northern Kentucky during the Civil War was the Battle of Perryville. Union didn't smash Bragg, let him run away. This says 894 Unionists were killed and 532 Confederates were killed. So I'm hearing different numbers, but in terms of casualties, 4,200 casualties for Americans, 4,200 casualties for the Americans, and 3,400 casualties for the goddamn terrorist, racist piles of shit. Leonidas Polk had occupied Columbus, Kentucky, September 1861. Who invaded Kentucky? Leonidas Polk. Leonidas Polk, the Confederates invaded Kentucky first, September 1861. And even though I say that Kentucky was never invaded, there was no full-fledged war with the goddamn, Commander-in-Chief Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, never went back into Kentucky again. But you did have John Hunt Morgan in one of his raids in July 1863. So there was some guerrilla warfare with a small motley crew, and they were going around doing, Morgan neckties, tearing up the railroads, tying the railroads into basically just going around destroying shit, destroying property, which had an effect. When you don't have railroads and you can't get the supplies, when you're destroying telegraph lines and you can't, have communication. But that was the last main time that the Confederate Army came into Kentucky. All you had was those Morgan Raiders, the guerrilla warriors that kind of went through Kentucky and then went up into Ohio. He's going to get captured. He's going to run away, and he's going to get captured again, run away, and then I want to say John Hunt Morgan eventually gets killed. He eventually gets killed, And there you go. That's the Battle of Perryville. Why am I talking about it? Because that's October 8th. That happened October 8th. And today is October 8th. So, Merry Battle of Perryville Day. Should we eat like a bunch of cinnamon rolls or something? Yeah, go eat yourself some cinnamon rolls to celebrate the Battle of Perryville. Right?